Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Just Around the Corner. Today I have with me Christina Williams. She is the executive director and founder of Circles NWA. Welcome. Really excited
Hi.
to
Yeah.
have you here and get to talk more about you and Circles.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, first off, would love to just hear more about what is Circles NWA.
Yeah. So Circles is a poverty reduction initiative. We work with low income individuals and families to help them pursue upward mobility from poverty. The unique thing about Circles that I like to talk about is that we flip the traditional mentorship model on its head to really center the leadership of those who are experiencing poverty.
Mm,
We call them our circle leaders. And that's not just a name. Like we truly believe that their leadership is needs to be centered in this process, that they are leaders in their own lives, leaders in our program, and that they're the leaders our community needs if we really want to find solutions to some of the biggest barriers and challenges leading to some of these issues with poverty. And so we have our circle leaders who are coming into the program, and then each circle leader gets matched with 2 or 3 volunteer allies who come from more higher income backgrounds. And they commit to walking alongside the circle leader over the course of 18 months as the circle leader is setting goals to increase their income, expand their support network and social capital, and grow as a leader in our community. So that's kind of circles in a nutshell. There's a lot of things that stem out from that, but kind of at its core, that's what we're doing.
yeah, which is so incredible. And I love how you said that we're really trying to flip things on its head and making the leaders the people who are experiencing the poverty and that they have a team that's coming around them to help them achieve their goals. And, I think you're so right in that we need everybody in the community, but especially the people who are experiencing poverty and the systemic oppression at its deepest levels to make the shifts. And, part of the systemic oppression that these people face is disempowerment and kind of just being told that they don't have agency over themselves, over their lives, and that they can't um, get the jobs that they want or really make it. And so that's really incredible what you guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned kind of there is this piece of upward mobility. Most people think of upward mobility as just like you make more money, you have economic success. But the research around like what does it take to actually achieve and sustain upward mobility shows it's not just economic success, it's also feeling valued in your community. And so we talk about like that social capital and belonging,
Mm.
and then power and autonomy. Like you just kind of said it, that having that sense of self-efficacy, that what I set out to achieve, I can actually achieve. I believe that about myself, that I have the ability to influence my life trajectory, my surroundings, my community. So often, I think in nonprofit programs and in things that are trying to help people, we can actually rob them of their power and autonomy. And so we're focused not only on not doing that, but actually trying to create an environment where we're building power and autonomy for people.
Yeah, yes, that's so good because, even sometimes in our best attempts to support and empower these people, it ends up continuing to reaffirm a message that they can't do it, that they don't have an inherent quality within themselves to achieve upward mobility in society and in their lives of having communities, having the resources they need. And so they need somebody who is in a higher status to come down and help them. And so, yeah, I love what you're saying of you're not trying to create some white savior complex. You're trying to break down those barriers and really give them back the power that they deserve, and that's been taken away from them in a lot of different arenas. So that's um,
Yeah.
incredible.
And I probably should have said build, like it's doing it with people, not for. I think I said for, but I meant with, because I think a lot of times with our allies, like they haven't personally experienced poverty. And so, you mentioned the savior mentality, you know, it's not necessarily a great strategy or solution to someone who has never experienced a problem to think that they can come in and fix the problem. And so this idea of we're doing this together as a community, or, you know, what we say circles, we're building community to end poverty. And so doing this together, because, but then centering the leadership of those who have that level of lived experience and insight,
Mm.
creates this really great dynamic where people that do have more financial resources and connections, like they have, you know, there is actually a place where you can help and you can support, but you're not, even in our program, not expected to like know the answer. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's been really, really cool to see the transformation that's happened in our circle leaders as they've grown and seeing themselves as truly seeing themselves as leaders.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I love that lived experience of you're trusting these people who to be the expert on their lives, to be the expert on their experiences. And, that's something that um I and a lot of other therapists embrace is this client as expert model, and that it's a very collaborative, and it's not about, and even just encouraging for the people who are volunteering that want to be on kind of like working with supporting their leaders is saying, okay, I don't have to have the answers. This isn't about me like coming in with all the right things to say or do. It's just about saying, hey, I think you matter as a person, and I think that you deserve a quality life that you want and that you deserve. And so helping them um, be heard in that and achieve those things. And just, yeah, it sounds like, again, what you've said, just like building communities, building circles. And that's
Mhm.
just so valuable.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mm. So what inspired you to do this? Like, how did this even come about?
Yeah. So this is a, I mean, this is quite a journey for me and my husband as we kind of ended up getting to this place where we launched Circles. But you know, we actually got to travel to India
Mm.
to this community that I was involved in kind of helping them. They were running a business over there as well as kind of doing some community development work. And I was their like stateside contact doing some just admin bookkeeping. But they invited me to come over and see. And we just got to experience this community where there were people who were from poverty, people who had not experienced poverty, living and working together. And I was like, man, this is what I want my life to look like. I want this kind of this type of community, this type of different experience. And so as we came back, we're like, how do we find this here in Northwest Arkansas? It's obviously extremely different than a place in northern India. You don't just get like hit in the face with poverty, you know? And so we're like, okay, well, we gotta like this concept of proximity became really important
Mm.
to us. I'm like, if we can't naturally get it by just kind of going outside and like walking around, like how do we go put ourselves in proximity with people who experience this community really differently than us? And so it started off, I was in grad school at the time. So I was like, hey, let's go have lunch at some of these community meals. And we went, we went through the line. I got food. I was a poor college student too. But I'd always only been on the other side serving. And so it was really eye-opening to me of like, oh, this is what it feels like to go through a line and receive a meal. And then we would just talk and I would get to know people and hear their stories. And it just like really started changing my understanding of what that kind of experience was. And then we began to invite people into our home and we had like Friendsgiving every year. And after after a few years, I was like, wow, I really think I built this community that I want. Like, this is what I had always wanted. And yet I had this like persistent frustration that for all the good things that are happening here in Northwest Arkansas, was not seeing people who are now my friends and my community, like be able to move up and out of poverty. Like they were stuck.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't understand, like, why is there nothing that seems to be like helping people increase their income? And it's not that there isn't, but like, why is it not working? I just was frustrated. And um and when I was in grad school at the time, I was studying this concept called social capital. And social capital basically refers to like the people you know, the connections you have, the relationships you have, they have value. They open up opportunities and resources, and you don't have to pay for it. And I
Mm,
was like, man, this is one of the most valuable yet underutilized resources that we have in this work for poverty reduction.
mm,
And I was like, we got to do something with this. And I was like, and I don't want to just do something that's like managing poverty anymore. I mean, poverty management, like sometimes when people are in crisis, like you need to help stabilize them. You need to stop the bleeding. But if all we're ever doing is just managing poverty, we are not going to see people move up and out of poverty. And so I'm like,
right.
okay, like this is what I want to see if we could do something with these two concepts. And so I ended up kind of designing a program that was very much a kind of like a wraparound, and how do we bring people from the community around someone and help them set goals and things like that. And we piloted that for a year, and we're like, okay, there's some really good things here, but we're missing a lot. And this is going to take a long time to build out. And so I was like, well, let's just see like maybe what already exists, and found the Circles model, which is a national model. It's been around for over 20 years. And we're like, okay, this is like really similar to what we were trying to build. This has like centering the leadership of the participant. It has the community aspects, and it also is like has something called Big View, which is out to tackle some of the systemic structural barriers that keep people stuck in poverty. And I was like, this is what we need to bring here. And so we kind of started that process originally within the context of one church, but realized it was way bigger than any one organization, one church. It's not a faith-based program either. It's really needed to be like for the entire community and accessible to the entire community. And so that's kind of how we ended up starting a separate nonprofit and kind of bringing Circles in as this like foundational program that we've been running now for the last 3 years, and has really kind of launched a lot of new, beautiful things for the community through that.
Wow.
So,
I mean, there's so many bits and pieces that I loved in what you shared. And I think a couple things that stand out is just the pure heart and wanting to see people in your community flourish, and wanting to be creative in seeing the issue in a holistic way and how to do that in a very empowering way. And so I love that. I love that um it really just all starts with being willing to be uncomfortable. And I think even a word you said was proximity. Like a lot of times we don't have proximity to people that are different than us.
yeah.
And that is so important. Like we need to be getting out of our comfort zones and connecting with people that we normally wouldn't connect with, because how can we try to advocate for issues and try to change things in our communities, in our nation, in our world, when we're not even connected to the people who are being impacted by it or letting their voices be heard? And so, um, yeah, I think that what you're sharing is just so incredibly valuable, and really is like a pretty new-ish approach on how to really create change. I think that there's not a lot of organizations that do it that way. And it takes a lot of vulnerability too. Like even when you mentioned, being served food, like that's so vulnerable. And putting power back into people's hands and saying like, hey, we're not just like trying to like say that you're the problem and that you need to be fixed, and we're just going to hand you all these things. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't even fully have words to just like say all the things that it's stirring up inside of me of like, wow, like that is just so awesome, what you guys do. And I think it just honestly brings to mind so many faces of people that I've met, that I'm like, man, uh I've had that moment where I see people in my life that are struggling, and I like want to see them flourish and I don't know how. And so this is such a great resource for those people, and even for to get involved in just personally is to help empower people and really build up our community to make it what it needs to be and what we want our communities to look like, which is where everybody
Yeah.
can have access to social capital and food and all the things, all the basic things.
hmm Yeah. I mean, it really, the proximity factor, I always tell people it's a natural human tendency to gravitate toward people who are similar to you. It's just easier. It's nice. People that like the same things that you like and that have maybe similar beliefs and grew up a similar way. It's just like it's normal. And so if we want to push against that, like it is going to be potentially uncomfortable or just different. And at Circles, we're trying to create this like third space
Mm,
for people to enter into where we, in this kind of flipped model, we are asking people to enter into roles that are different from what they are used to. And so the first part of the program is just helping them get prepared. So circle leaders go through 12 weeks of training on how to, become successful as a circle leader. So they're talking about their story and doing strengths finders. They're talking about the trauma of poverty.
mm,
We're doing dream boards and learning how to do SMART goals and budgeting and all these things that are, supposed to set them up for success. But also for the allies, we're asking them to come in with a different mindset. And so helping them understand like what is a successful ally, what does poverty look like in our community, helping them see like poverty is complex and it's dynamic and it's not just that one thing that you picture most likely. And so we really dive into that, as well as helping them develop some like, how do you be an active listener? And, and when we do make mistakes, because we're coming from different understandings of the world, often like we have tools like oops and ouch that like allow space to say, hey, that, I may have said that wrong, or like I didn't, I made a oops, and then it gives place someone, or I mean that like maybe that hurt me, that was an ouch, and then the person can respond and say like, that was, didn't intend for that. I understand, things
mm.
like that. So we want people to be prepared as they can be to be in a space where they, um, where we're kind of pushing up against something that's maybe not as like our bodies may not always like want us to do, or our minds may not always be comfortable with. And so, yeah, but it's been really beautiful to see how possible that is when people are willing, when they're willing to learn and grow and kind of reimagine what the world could be like, what this community could be like, and just to have that different kind of community. It really is like, it's beautiful. It's hard. It's not always easy, but it is well worth it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very curious space.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, you do. You have to be willing to like open up your mind and ask questions. And there's so much that we talk about around perspective and narrative change. Like we all have these things that we believe about why the world is the way it is, why people are in poverty, um, and to kind of, for us as an organization, to be in a place where we can see narrative change, that we can see, um, the way people understand the world be transformed over the course of almost 2 years, uh, on both sides, really. Our circle leaders often don't believe that people would just do this because they want to, like they must want something, or or like maybe they must have been successful because they did the right things in life.
mm,
And seeing like this, both sides is complex. And I still love talking about social capital because it's like the thing that we tend to leave out of all the stories we tell about our successes. Like I worked hard, I put in the late hours, I did this right, never, or failing to mention that, this person helped me, or this person watched my children, or they gave me a leg up, or they connected me. And like that's like a really beautiful story. And I don't know why we omit it. Like I want more people to talk about those things. And so we talk about social capital constantly. Every time in Circles that someone builds social capital or forms a connection or uses it, we literally have a social capital board that says I heart social capital, and we like pin it to the board. We're like visual display of all these things that help people get ahead, help people feel connected, make us like who we are. So
Mm.
I love that part.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think that really pushes against a very strong individualistic society that we
Yeah.
live in, where there is value and power in being able to do something completely on your own. And this is saying, no, like we need other people, and we need to start acknowledging and including in our storytelling how other people have shaped our journeys and helped us in success, and knowing that that is normal and good and that we need that. Like it doesn't mean you're a failure because you needed somebody to help you. It actually is such a beautiful strength to be able to have the courage to say, I can't do this on my own. I need a village of people to come around me and show me what I don't know. And yeah, I mean, even just the learning experience on both sides of, I'm even reflecting of my own like worldview around all these things, and just seeing like, yeah, like I have so much to learn about what poverty looks like and how dynamic it is and what it would be like to live that experience, and how to be curious and compassionate and really partner with people and be an ally, and um even name my own experiences of poverty or privilege and how that impacts things. And so what you're saying is so good. And even if people never volunteer or get connected with Circles, just having this conversation and opening up doors and thoughts of, hey, like, have you really thought about what your community looks like and what you're doing to participate in the either continuation of the way it looks or the changing of that? And um, I think that that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is. I do feel like, I mean, there's definitely opportunities to get involved in Circles through being an ally and circle leader and things like that. But we very much believe that it is about being like part of this community in a broader sense. Like
Mm,
when I was writing the vision statement for this organization, which the nonprofit is called Innovative Poverty Solutions. And, it's like, okay, our vision, like I do want to see poverty ended. I want to see people out of poverty. But I had learned quite a bit over the last decade of how complicated poverty was and how it's constantly changing. And realizing that, once you solve one thing, there might be another thing that comes up, or that there's the minute you get funding for something and you're seeing success, that, the whatever the politics or the climate changes, and now this is not funded anymore, and the priorities change and all these things, right? And so I'm like, man, I don't know that there is a place where you suddenly just check the box and you've like ended poverty. And so when I was writing the vision statement, I was like, what would it really look like to be in a community where we felt like we were like ended poverty? And I was like, okay, I think, and this is what our vision statement is, it's like a community committed to removing the barriers that keep people stuck.
mm, mm,
And so we talk about that phrase of a community committed. So like there might be a barrier here, but we're committed to going and addressing that. And we might like feel good about that one for a time, and then there's something else over here, but we're committed to, like, we're not okay with that
mm,
being in our community. We're not okay with people experiencing that. And so that's like what I always want to invite people into, is like be part of this community committed, that
mm,
we're, whether it's housing or it's the cycle of fines and fees, or the cliff effect we talk about all the time, like, but any of these things that I'm like, I'm committed. It doesn't mean you have to do everything, but as a community, we're committed to saying, I'm not okay with that. And that truly is the vision, the long-term goal that I think will really transform this community, so that we're not seeing this never-ending cycle of people being stuck in poverty with no real way to move up.
mm. Yeah, that's really good. Of just yeah, it's about being involved. It's about saying, okay, I'm not going to just sit by and watch these things happen. I'm not going to be ambivalent, or um, even with people who have questions of, okay, this feels so big. I don't even know what to do about it, or that what I can say or do will even matter. What you're saying is, no, it does. Like, just taking those small steps to connect, to be engaged, to see people in a more full way, and to just do those small daily things, that all matters. And that's part of creating change. And it really is like this like ripple effect. And so um, that's really encouraging, and makes it very approachable. And so curious for, want to hear on both sides of, like, if you're interested in getting involved in circles, like, how would you do that as a volunteer? How would you do that as somebody who is wanting to be like a circle leader? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Mhm. Yeah, so we start a new cohort every fall. So right now we're recruiting volunteer allies for the fall cohort. And so if someone's interested in that, they can go online to our website and fill out an application. And then we're also going to have some ally info sessions coming up next month so they can learn more about it, ask questions, kind of hear the ins and outs of what does this mean to be an ally. And then there's other ways to get involved volunteering. We have a children's program that meets during our weekly meeting, which we meet Wednesday evenings every week, kind of a gathering, and work on goals and all the things. But there's a kids program that goes along that, so that people, both circle leaders and allies, can bring their kids, make sure it's accessible for everyone, as well as gives that the kids that kind of community that we're building for their parents as well. We also serve a meal every week, so there's opportunity to be involved in helping prepare that and set up, clean up, things like that. To be a circle leader, there's an application online. We are about to finalize the list of circle leaders for this fall cohort. So if people are interested, they can apply for next year. Um, and that involves the online application plus an interview for that. So, but we're always recruiting. We just have this kind of fall start date. So those are kind of the main ways to get involved as a participant or volunteer. And then we do have kind of some ways to get kind of more exposure to circles. We have community-wide, what we call big view events. Big view is kind of where we zoom out from just like more of an individual to look at what are those systemic structural barriers keeping people stuck. So we just had one recently on housing. It was called Home is Where the Hardship Is. And it's where we get to hear from our circle leaders. They have very powerful stories that I think can really kind of reshape how people think about things like the housing crisis. But those are open to the public and are really great opportunities to kind of see what this is about, see how you can get involved. So I'd say signing up for our newsletter is the best way to stay up to date on things like that.
Amazing. Um, and are there any other things that you're working on, projects that you're involved in, that people can get connected to as well?
Yes. Oh, we're always working on projects. I mean, we're one of the really cool things about circles is we're constantly like we're listening to our circle leaders, like what are those barriers and challenges, um, what what are those things that are keeping you from achieving your goals, or that you're like seeing and experiencing in the community, not just you but maybe broadly speaking. And so one of the things that so we just graduated our second cohort in May, and one of the things that came up for them was around um, cars and auto lending, and that they were one of the, I mean, we know in Northwest Arkansas you need a car. You pretty much definitely need a car to get around, to get to work, take your kids places. And but the cars that they were able to purchase, they were like really high interest rates on. I mean,
Mm.
one of our circulars has like 24% interest for their car note. And
Yes.
and these are cars that are not the best quality, that they end up paying like 2 to 3 times what the car is actually worth by the end of it. And so you can't even like resell it, or if it breaks down, or like it's just a really like it's and I mean, it's called predatory auto lending. Like it's set up to like exploit people that don't have the credit, don't have the financial means. And in a situation where, you know, housing costs are going up in this area and people's budgets are squeezed, so like when you have that high, like these are really high car payments, that just put the whole budget out of whack. So through that, we went through this process of like, how do we make sure we understand the problem, and then how do we begin to reimagine like what could be possible from this, and and then we kind of, you know, between our circle leaders and allies and some other volunteers in our organization, like we started to take action. Like, what if we could create an alternative lending program for to get vehicles for circle leaders and people like them. And so we're in the process of working on that. We still have a lot of steps, but you know, we're looking for people right now that that like cars, that are car experts. That I'm not that, but this is the, you know, we're talking to different banks and CDFIs kind of from the finance lending side. But once we get that nailed down, it really is going to be about building partnerships and good relationships with people who can source cars, mechanics who can fix cars. So we're looking at maybe forming something called like car buddies, that you could have like someone who helps you find that good, reliable car.
Mhm.
So if there happen to be people out there that are listening to this that like, man, I love cars. I love looking for cars, shopping for cars. I think a lot of people hate doing that, but there is definitely a group of people that love that. And
Yeah.
so that's like, we're often looking for kind of niche specialty skills like that or interests like that. So, you know, it may not necessarily be obvious that like your skill set would fit with circles, but it never hurts to ask, because we're constantly innovating and looking for different things that could be created to kind of counter, I call them counter structures, like to counter some of this like negative structural structural forces that are out there keeping people held down. So that's not necessarily like a clear answer, but we're innovating constantly. So I would say like if there's people out there that are want to think big and think out of the box, and like while also like continuing to learn from those closest to the problem, then like it would be interesting to talk to you.
Yes. No, yeah, I think that's great. It's a very open invitation. And it's really just saying, hey, if you want to be involved, if you're a dreamer, if you are seeing some of these things or you're inspired, hey, you can come alongside us and dream with us and help make these things possible. And that is amazing. So yeah, it is like broad and vague, but also makes sense. So because I think that just speaks again to what you guys are trying to do, and this is a complex dynamic situation and world we live in, and so it requires very dynamic answers and ways to approach and reimagine these things, and so I love that. Well, Christina, this has just been so fun getting to learn and talk with you. And yeah, if you are listening today and you are inspired, encouraged, if you feel like you would really fit into this, please reach out. I will be posting the different tags and links to where you can get connected. And yeah, Christina, just thanks so much for being willing to spend time to telling the community about circles and how we can get connected.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we are recruiting allies up until probably the end of August. So if people are interested, now's the time. So I would
Right.
love to see people reach out. So thank you so
Right.
much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, thanks so much, Christina.